games. It's ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames.
How's it going, Scrub Gamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we have the next installment of my Understand How to Build series, where we go over all the leaders in a given set to help you understand how to build them to suit you and your playstyle. Now, we've covered most of the aggression once. We're on the last one of aggression before we move to Cunning, and that is with REY. So if you're interested, then stay tuned, and also don't forget, you can also like, comment, and subscribe to keep updated with my videos as and when they drop. And also by clicking that notification bell, you can get alerts when my videos do drop, so you can watch them there and then, or at a later time that suits you best. We all are also on our way to 2,000 subs, which are currently, as recording, 11 subs away. So currently going up almost in the single digit. So every little bit helps. If you have already subscribed, then thank you very much. So let's get into it and help you understand how to build REY. So the first thing we're going to do is start with the leader, as Star Wars Unlimited is a leader-based game, and you can't really play without one, and they're what you're going to mainly build your deck around. And for REY, she is one of the leaders that was the least looked into, or least interesting, of many leads we got in set 5, and that is just due to what she does. But I feel she is a little bit better than we first thought, and I've even got a deck profile which you can go and check after this that I've been trying and testing out, because I've looked at her and thought it could be interesting to give a try out. So with REY, she is REY Nobody, and she has the Force and Resistance trait. So Force is a good benefit. It's a trait that every leader in the set has, and it's a very nice one to use some of those Force cards as well. She also, with the Resistance trait, you don't really get much benefit, but you can get some, just not too much that you really care about, really. And she is a late deploying leader, and what I mean by that is that she doesn't deploy until 7 resources, which means as soon as you get 7 resource down, which is what you use to pay for cards, then you can deploy her. And she comes down as a 6/8, which is pretty solid stats. 8 power is 8 health is very strong, very bulky, and 6 power is pretty strong. Now, her effects kind of differ on each side, because she's one of those leaders where when she deploys, her effect changes compared to what was in lead area, where some of them they kind of just have an improved version of their leader side. And she also provides you with the aggression and heroism traits, so you got those little aspects to benefits there. So when she's in the lead area, she has an action which you need to exhaust her, but sort of tap her depending on what term you use. And if you played a non-unit force card this phase, you get to deal 1 damage to a unit. So you kind of think about, when building her, what non-unit force cards you want to play or have, and there's different ones in different aspects. So it's got to be a force card, so a card with a force trait, but not a leader. And then you get to deal 1 point of damage. You might think 1 point of damage is not much, but it could be a thing to finish something off, especially since you've got some cards that minus stats to reduce the stats of a card, or even ones that do damage themselves as well. So you can basically increase the damage or put them in range without 1 damage to finish them off. Now, when she does deploy, her effect is a when deployed. So when she deploys, you get this effect, and that is you can discard your entire hand, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. Now, it might not sound great most of the time, but if you've got a lot of cards in hand, so you've got 3 or more, you're not really going to want to, even if you've got 2 or more, you're not really going to want to do that and use that effect unless you don't care about those cards in your hand. But if you have 1 or no cards in your hand, that'd be a great way to increase your hand size to basically gain more cards. So by ditching 1 card, it could be, say, for Anakin, you could have a villainy card in your hand, you can discard that, and now Anakin's set up to get his full effect, and you have 2 more cards. Or if you've got no hand, you then go back up to 2 cards to kind of help you have more options available. So her effects aren't the most amazing, but they're not too bad, really. Also note that REY, like all other leaders, have a showcase, and this is her showcase, so it's not a bad one, pretty nice. But you got to remember that with showcases, they're just alternative art, so more shiny arts, and with art, it's subjective. So if you like it, fair enough. If you don't like it, also fair enough, because the only opinion that matters is yours, because you'll be the one playing the card. So if you want to go get this showcase version of her, go get it. If you don't have to worry about it too much. So now we covered the leader, let's get into the rest of the video. Now, since the leader is all about pinging 1 damage every time you use a force non-unit, you got to think about what that is. So there's 3 types of cards in the game. There are the units, which are basically creatures or characters you use to kind of attack and fight in the game. You have your events, which are like spells and things you can cast to like do all types of different things. And there are upgrades, which are like weapons and attachments that you can put on to units to basically power them up or give them like certain things. So since it says non-unit, it means any force card that has, or any card that has the force trait that's not units, only ever 2 types, events or upgrades. And there are a fair few in different ones. Some aspects have more, some aspects have less, and that's why we're going to go through them and kind of see what we got. Here's just some examples. You got force cards both the villainy side as well. So if you want to fully trigger Anakin, which we'll kind of go over in a bit, then you can have these villainy versions of cards to do it. And also you got the normal version. You got cards that are in Heroism and also in the normal forms and aspects. So there's quite a few different ones, and what we're going to do is when we go for each of the different aspects, we're going to look into them and see what the benefits of them are. Alright, now this will be the part where I go over the basics of the game. So if you're a brand new player or a newer player to TCGs or to Star Wars Unlimited in general, then you can get as much information to help you out, to help understand the basics of the game, to give you that kind of helpful knowledge along with building the leader. But the issue with that was that it's very long. I keep repeating it for every video, so doing 18 times a set just to go over the same thing over and over, going over like bases, aspects, the penalties, and also ratios. So what I've done instead, because also there was some positive feedback about including that, there's also some negative ones because people didn't know how to skip alongside them, even though I had chapters for almost every video to kind of skip along if you didn't need that. So what I've done instead is started doing a understanding the basics video for every set. So that way is one I'll do for every set, going over the new basics of the game from that set. So anything new in there that impacts the basics or the basic information you need for the game, then it go over that. And since I didn't do one for the previous sets, it's all in set 5, which is luckily because we got a brand new mechanic, which is a good thing to go over. I did it for this set. So if you want to go check out that one, should be a card that appears above. You can go and check it out, called Understanding the Basics, going over all the basic mechanics you need to understand about the game from set 5 to help you out if you're a brand new or newer player. But if you're not and you're more of a veteran player, then let's carry on with the rest of the video. So every leader has a certain amount of aspect options. Technically, every leader has 5 because there's aspectless base from set 4. You don't really want to use that unless it's better than going double aspects. Usually, if you're going with that base, you'll probably go double aspects. At least it gives you some more options rather than just taking away an aspect. It gives you at least a duplicate aspect. So it's technically 5, but we don't count that one because no leader goes with it apart from Hera, because sometimes that health is sometimes better than going double command for her. So technically, for every leader for any normal leader, there is 4 aspect options, and you're always going to get the same 2 from your leader, and then depending on what base you go for, you'll get a third one. So the options for REY are double red, red blue, red green, and red yellow. So what we're going to do is go over all these different aspect options and see what's available to them, what is good for one you can get from them, and then also see if it's a viable option for REY. So the first one we'll start off with is aggression, because this is the aspect that your leader provides herself, along with heroism. So we're going to see what she provides from her own. Now also, after that, we're going to go over the double aspect to see if that's a benefit, because that's the smallest of the card pools. So we're going to see what bases you get for aggression. So if you want to use the Force, which you don't have to with REY, REY is very beneficial in that she doesn't need to use the Force, but she can if she wants to, because there are some benefits using the Force and some negatives, where negatives not really the base, positives being what some of the cards do that need to use the Force. So for Force options, you've got the common bases, which require you to attack with a Force unit to attack, and you've got the rare base. Now the rare bases differ, but they all have 25 health, whereas the common bases are exactly the same, 28 health, attack with a Force unit again Force, and that's it, just different art and aspects. So the rare base for the Force in aggression is a Temple of Destruction. It needs to attack just like a common base, but a little bit differently, where a Force base needs to attack with a Force unit. Temple of Destruction just needs you to do 3 damage with a friendly unit to your opponent's base via combat to gain the Force. So this means anything can attack to do it, to gain the Force, and like a Force base is needing a Force unit, and then you just need to make sure they do 3 combat damage from that attack. Now, if you don't want to use the Force, you've got other bases like Tarkin Town, Firmware Slayer, and the like plentiful amount of pretty health with other bases. And these offer nice things, like Tarkin Town is nice in that it helps you do 3 damage to a non-unit or non-leader unit damaged unit. So if you've got something that you've damaged that's not a leader, you can finish it off with that extra 3 damage. You got Thermal Oscillator to kind of increase the deck consistency by decreasing the overall deck size, because normally it's 50, but with Thermal Oscillator it's 45. And you've got the 30 health bases if you feel like any of the other bases aren't really worthwhile for yourself. Now start off with Heroism, because it's normally the better side, along with Villainy. For any aspect, you normally get the better cards in Heroism and Villainy. And for Heroism, you got some really nice stuff. You got some pretty cool cards here, like you got some Force units if you want to use the Force, and you got some good solid units as well that go so. So the top ones being our more some pretty good units. You've got Adigalea being a good turn 1 unit, as long as Speed and Ren both being a very nice one. Adigalea giving you the Force, Speed and Ren being a good way to take out those 2-cost shielded units that are normally 2/2s, help take them out by pinging the damage and then defeating them whilst surviving. You got some good ways to use the Force in Ki-Adi-Mundi and Mace Windu here. Both need to use the Force for their cost for the 1 played, whereas Ki-Adi-Mundi draws you 2 cards, which is very nice to keep your hand healthy. Mace Windu does 4 damage to a unit and also has Overwhelm, and then they got the same stats as their cost, which is cool. You got the ever big units as well, like Mace Windu and Chindragolan, which are pretty nice. Mace Windu being like a Heroic Vader, where it has the same stats as a 5/7 for 7 ambush, but it's Vex differ after that, because when he attacks and defeats a unit, you can then restand, so you can attack again after that. Whereas Chindragolan does have the best stats for an 8 cost, being a 5/6, but when he's played, you get to play onto him a lightsaber upgrade for free and then ready him, so you can then attack bases or whatever you want powered up with the lightsaber. You also got some nice spaceships as well if you want to put them in. You got like Jedi Starfighter, which is a good one for against the space aggro, and I consider Interceptor being a solid turn 1 play as well if you want for a spaceship. You got Red 5 being a nice one to kind of go with Ray's effect, where whenever it attacks, it can deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. And you got Kit Fisto's Aphis Right as a way to just knock off upgrades, or all the upgrades off a unit. So if they got a unit that's got loads of upgrades on, knock them all off with this. And you got some good non-force kind of units, like Cassian Andor and Poe Dameron being very solid ones. Cassian Andor being the best stats you can get for free cost. Plus also has Smuggle, and if you do smuggle him, he comes in active while he readies himself, so he can attack the same turn. And you got Poe Dameron, who has good stats for its cost, 6/6 on a 5 cost, and with a nice effect to be able to ditch cards from your hand to be able to go ahead and do certain effects, which doesn't matter too much for Rey, because once she deploys, you can gain you 2 more cards back if you empty your hand. Now for aggression, you've got some pretty nice stuff as well. You've got things like Marin, which is a good way to discard cards in your hand, make use of them so you can draw back up when you deploy, and also get help things set up like for Anakin to get a villainy card set up in your discard. You even got Jedi Hiding, a good way to use the Force, or when defeated, use the Force to make your opponent discard a card from the hand. You got Quinlan Voss and Asajj Ventress being nice ones that complement each other, where Quinlan is a solid 4 cost 4/5, but one attack, if he has 6 or more power, he gets to do 2 damage to your opponent's base. And Asajj can facilitate that by when played or when attacking. She can give a never friendly Force unit plus 2 power at least for that phase, so power up Quinlan so you can fulfill his on attack. You also got Chamsadula being the only ramp outside of green, where if your opponent draws more resources when you play it, you get the ramp on top card of your deck. And you got Great Dragon being a very solid card, a big top end for the late game, being a big 10/10 unit for 9 that makes it so anytime your opponent plays a card, you can do damage to either one of their ground units or their base equal to the cost of the card they played. And it's not once per turn, it's every time they play a card, every turn. And it's a nice card that people have been incorporating. This is a way to guarantee a good amount of damage with Force Throw, while you can draw a Force unit to make sure you can do 9 damage to something. Now for the non-units, you've got things like Ki-Adi-Mundi. No, sorry, not Ki-Adi-Mundi. A Hotshot Blaster would be a nice one that people are even playing outside of Cunning, which is pretty nice, because it then allows you to go ahead and because it normally it's action efficiency, because what it can do if you smuggle it, which is usually for free with free resources plus the Cunning aspect you need, you can then go ahead and equip it and attack the same turn you equip it to then get 2 actions in 1, which is really good. But people are now still playing it out of aspect, so that way when they do it, they can still finish off, because the whole action saving by equipping and attacking, so attacking with a +2 attack, +2 power, is always really beneficial. Now for events, you got some pretty nice ones, like you got Force Throw, you also got Sorcerer's Blast as well, being one of our good ones for red, and yeah, it's a very nice one. You also have to you got 2 Force non-lethal units. You don't have many Force events in red that are worthwhile, but Force Throw and Sorcerer's Blast are good ones, because Force Throw is a really solid one. because you choose a player, making that player discard a card, and if you control a force unit, which you hopefully will, you can then do damage to a unit equal to the cost of the discarded card. So you can either discard your opponent's card, so make him lose a card from hand, and then also damage one of the units, but they get to control how much damage is dealt by choosing what they discard. Whereas you can also discard a card from your own hand to guarantee a certain amount of damage done, like how I said with Throw and Great Dragon, it guarantees that 9 damage is being done. Whereas Sorcerer's Blast is use the force, and if you do deal 3 damage to a unit, then with Rey's effect, you'll make it an extra 1 damage on top, so you can technically take something out with 4 damage for 1 with this. You also have some other damaging events like Daring Raid, Open Fire, and Bombing Run. All do damage in different ways. Daring Raid does 2 damage for 1, but that's either to a base or unit. Open Fire does for 3 resources, 4 damage to a unit. And then you got Bombing Run, which for 5 does 3 damage to all units in any arena, you don't have a ground or space. So you gotta think about it. Is this pretty good? Are these pretty good? These are pretty good cards. And also, don't forget you got Heroism as well. And the nice thing about Heroism is that it's a very nice, helpful effect. Heroism is an aspect that likes to help each other out, compared to Villainy, which just likes to be overwhelmed with overwhelming power. And you got some nice cards in Heroes that you can also put in, because remember, Heroism is on its own cards as well as aggression cards. So you got Caretaker, Matron, Grogu, the Daughter, and Tech, which could be pretty nice ones. They're not all the cards you can have in there, but there are some of the nicer ones I picked out. Caretaker Matron is a nice card you can play turn 1, and then it's got a nice action where if you played a force card could be an upgrade, unit, or an event. You're going to get the draw card. You can have this turn 1, and then start playing things like some events or some force cards, and then start doing damage and just dealing things on board, and then draw a card and keep your hand healthy to keep options if you want to. You got Grogu, which can heal up to 2 damage from any unit, and then deal that much damage to a unit, so either a different unit or same unit. Very nice. So healing your own units, damaging your opponents is pretty cool. You got the Daughter, who can then heal your base by 2 damage by using the force every time damage is dealt to your base, so keeping 2 off your base. And you got Tech, which allows you to smuggle anything from your resources by giving them a smuggle cost and making everything in your resources smuggle, and even has smuggle himself. So that is all the cards available to Rey. Now let's have a look and see for double red if it's a good option. So with double aspect for red, it's I would say the worst. It's the weakest of the double aspects compared to all the other ones, because not only does it have less cards than the others, well, technically has less cards than the others now. Well, it didn't have less cards than the others, but now with DJ Band, it has the same as Cunning, but still it's got technically printed. It's got less cards than the others. It's been shafted a little bit of that, and its effects aren't so great compared to what the others do for their aspects. Now, red's kind of identity has lots of different things. It's got drawing cards being an identity of red. Quite a few cards in red draw cards. You also got a lot of upgrade hate, and you also got damaging effects. So red is all about damaging, drawing, and also knocking off upgrades. So you got some pretty strong effects in there. But then with these cards, you got to remember that by going double red, you lose access to all the Vigilance, Cunning, and Command cards. By then sacrificing those, have access to these 11 cards. Now what you got to think about is, are these 11 cards worth sacrificing those aspects for? And with Rey, I would say out of these ones, only 2 are really viable. Now, what in this aspect, you do have 1 force event. It's unlimited power, which isn't a great one because you're paying 6 to do damage to up to 4 different units equal to a different amount. You could do 4, 3, 2, and 1, but you can't do it all to the same unit, or however to a unit multiple times. It's got to be to 1 unit each. So you can't do 4. You can do 4 to 1, but you got to do 3 to something completely different. 2 damage to something completely different from the other 2, and so on for the 1 damage. So it's not a great card, especially for 6 resources. And even then, with some of the other units and events, they're not really worth it for the cost. Their cost isn't great for their effect, and they're just very lackluster. But 2 that are pretty good are Aggression and Twice the Pride. So Aggression gives you 4 options. You can resolve any 2 how you choose. It could be draw a card, defeat 2 upgrades, ready a unit with 3 less power, draw a card, or do 4 damage to a unit. So some really good options available to them. So nice ones there. And then Twice the Pride, which is able to give you 4 power to a unit, but then you deal 2 damage to it as well, which could be beneficial if you have something with grit, so you can power it up, but usually it's not going to be great. So out of those 11 cards, only 2 are viable. So is double red good an option for Rey? I'd say no. It's not a good option, especially if you're sacrificing a whole other aspect. For those 11 cards, only 2 are viable. Next we have Vigilance, and this is the aspect that is very defensive in terms of like healing, removal, and defending yourself with shields. And for the force base, well, for the bases you have these options. So for a force base, you've got the standard common bases when you need to tap the force, you can gain the force. And for the rare base is Virgin's Temple. Now this is the one that's able to give you the force before you start your turn, but only once a turn, because it's when the regroup phase starts. It's the phase at the end of the turn. If you control a unit with 4 more remaining HP, you gain the force. So it means you can have the force before you start your turn, ready to use anything that needs to use the force, but you're limited in how many times you have the force every turn by having it once. So if you miss it at the end of your turn by not having a unit that's viable for it, you then lose the force and you can't gain it until the end of your next turn if you can set up a unit on board. So those are your force options. Now for the other ones, you've got things like Colossus, Pal City, and the 30 health bases. So Colossus gives you the maximum health in the game, but makes your starting hand 1 less by starting off with 5 cards instead of 6. You got Pal City, which gives Rey more health when she's deployed, but since she's deployed so late, and you're not really worried about her deploying too much outside just being a beat stick, it's not going to be too worth it, especially for the lower cost and lower health amount. And you got those standard 30 health bases if you feel like none of them are useful. Now we're going to always talk about Anakin when it comes to covering blue for any leader or a blue leader, because it's such a powerful card. It's probably one of the best, probably the best legendary in the set. Because what it does is it has 2 1-playeds, and both of them -3/3 to a unit if you've got a certain card in the discard, and that the cards you need for each of them are, so one of them needs Heroism, one needs Villain. Now every leader is going to have either Villainy or Heroism covered, depending on what they have, because you can't have both the same. You don't have both together as actually Pen Palpatine. But some decks are now incorporating the other side of the aspect, so Villainy and Heroism, and then vice versa, just to get the full effect of this, because minusing 6/6 is very powerful. Minusing 3/3 is still strong, but getting the full effect of Anakin is just very powerful. So some cards you can incorporate to get the full effect of Anakin are things like Merrin, along with putting some Vinny cards in your deck, because then Merrin can help make sure you can discard a card. But some leaders might have an easy way to discard it themselves, some might need extra help. And since Rey doesn't have a really discard apart from deploying, you might want to put things like Merrin in so you can get discards. You can discard things like Force Lightning, or other Vinny cards, just on attack, discard, and put some damage on board, which helps along with Rey's ability to be able to damage things. You've also got Force Throw, which can discard your own Villainy cards and then do it, then damage things, and then also trigger Rey. And same with Force Lightning. Force Lightning's a cheap 1-drop, but then with the asset penalty you paying 3 for it, but still a very good card, because as long as if you're playing a lot of Force units, you get the effect to be able to come out, negate the effects on a card, and then pay more resources to damage it. And since it's a Force event, Force non-unit, Rey can then ping out extra damage if need be as well. So you got some good ways to trigger Anakin to get the full effect in Rey. Now in the Heroism side of Vigilance, you've got quite a few good cards. You've got Yaddle, you've got Yoda. Well, you've got a lot of Force units to basically generate the Force if you need be, and just have some really good units on board. So you've got Yaddle, Yoda, Ezra Bridger, Kanan Jarrus, Itinerant Warrior, and Rey is some good solid units. Yaddle being good for turn 1 and providing you Restore, and giving all your other Jedi units Restore 2. Well, sorry, not Restore 2, but Restore 1, as basically Restore as well in Restore 1. And you got Yoda, which could come out, Yoda and Ezra, which would both come out on turn 2 onwards. Yoda giving more Restore, and also when defeated, allows you to draw yourself a card. Ezra having the best stats for a free cost, and then 1 attack, going to buff up one of your creature or spectre units by an experience every time he attacks, so buff things like Kanan. You got Kanan Itinerant Warrior being good turn 3 onwards units. Kanan having very good stats, and on attack, discarding cards of your opponent's deck equal to the number of spectres you control, and then healing a damage from your base equal to the number of aspects you mill from that attack. You got Itinerant Warrior, which comes in with a shield and can use the Force to heal 3 damage from your base. And you have Rey, which is a nice one, which it can attack and heal 2 damage from a unit, and if that unit's not a Heroism card, so if you're playing non-Heroism Force units that have cards in there, you can give a shield to it, so it can take a unit, which is cool. You also got things like Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker Redemption as your big top-end units. Obi-Wan being a pretty nice Sentinel, which can then draw you more cards and buff up things. Luke Skywalker being a very solid unit. It's a 7 cost, 6/7, some good stats and cost. Restore 3, so it's healing a lot when it attacks. Plus, it's also minusing the stats on a unit and does more if you've lost a unit in that phase. And you got Redemption being a way to kind of heal a lot of damage off your base or units, however you choose, and then damaging yourself equal to the amount you heal. So a pretty nice one there. And you got some good things like some good upgrades like Jedi Lightsaber, and some good Force events like Mr. Reflection and Forces with Me to help out as well, facilitate Rey. Like Mr. Reflection doing minusing and gets better minusing if you have a Force unit, whereas Forces with Me allows you to give 2 experience to a unit attack with it, and if it's a Force unit, gain some shields and also a Force event to trigger a Rey. And you can get Lightsaber to put on some of your Force units, make it stronger, make them just be able to take out units a little bit easier. Now, in the non-heroism side, you've got some pretty cool stuff. Some good units. So your own Lance is a way to help you find more Force units, but it's also providing you with healing. You got good turn 1 plays in Secretive Sage and Night Sister Warrior being units that can come down on turn 1, where the Sage gives himself a shield, so it's easy to stick around. Night Sister Warrior allows you to draw a card when defeated. And you got Chirrut, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Anakin as ever good units. Chirrut being a very nice one to use the Force by being a Sentinel, so he has to be attacked into. When he is, you can use the Force to reduce the damage by 2 every time as long as you use the Force. Ki-Adi can draw you more cards by having, if you have 2 other units alongside him on the board, when you put in place a second card in a phase, you get to draw 2. Anakin, as you've seen, is a very powerful card, especially if you can facilitate its full effect. Now, for some events and non-units, you've got some good Force ones like Bolstered Endurance, Roll of Power, Shatter Points. Now, Bolstered Endurance is a 1-cost upgrade that you can put it on a Force unit and give it extra 1 power and 3 health. So that's what to buff them up, and it's a Force non-unit then, to then allow upgrade ping. You got Whirlwind of Power, which is a free cost. That gives -2/2 to a unit. If you control a Force unit, it gives -3/3, and then because this is a Force non-unit, you can also ping your damage. So you can actually take out something with 4 or less health, which is really cool. And you got Shatter Point, which is one of the removal events, and this is a nice one because it's a Force unit, so you can do damage to your unit as well. So you can pop something and then damage something else. And it's got 2 options where you can either defeat anything that's not. You can defeat 3 health or less non-unit with 1 option, or use the Force and defeat any non-leader unit if you've used the Force. It's got option there. And then for other events you can also put in to have removal is like Takedown, Fellow Dragon, Rebels Fall. Be nice removal at different costs. So Takedown and Fellow Dragon are both 4 costs, but then Takedown takes out anything that's got 5 or less health, whilst Fellow Dragon takes out any non-leader that's got 5 or more power. And you got Rivals Fall, which is for 6, takes out anything, even leaders. So, is blue a good option to have with Rey? And I would say yes, absolutely is, because you get some strong Force of non-events in there to make sure you use a Rey, and you get some good things like a lot of healing to stick around and survive long enough, good protection, and good removal as well for things. So, that's a solid option. Next we have Command, and Command is the ramp aspects as a way to accelerate your resources to put out bigger things quicker or more things out in a single turn. Now for the bases you have some really strong options, like Command has probably some of the better bases in the game compared to its leaders. And for the Force ones you've got Mystic Monastery and the common bases. Remember the common bases attack with a Force unit and you can gain the Force, easy enough. Whereas the Mystic Monastery has got a way to just gain you the Force by just as an action gaining the Force. But something that strong, it's got to be limited, and it is because you can only use it 3 times in a single game. So the benefit of it is if you don't need to use the Force more than 3 times, it's a very strong way to just gain the Force without needing anything to like stick on around and attack with. But you're limited to how many times you use it. But since Rey doesn't need to use the Force, it could be a good option. Now for ever strong bases, you've got things like Energy Conversion Lab, which is ECL for short, Data Vault, or 30 health bases. Now both Energy Conversion Lab and Data Vault are very strong bases. Energy Conversion Lab, ECL, keep calling it for short. ECL has been the best base for the first 2 sets, and then Data Vault was one of the best, was probably the best base after it released in set 4. Now they have different effects. So ECL, it's got epic actions, so actually you can take once a game, play a unit from your hand that costs 6 or less by paying its resources and give it ambush for that phase, and ambush is a very good skill. And then you got Data Vault, which gives you more health but increases your deck size. So unlike Force of Thermal Slayer where it reduces your deck size, this increases it. So it turns your deck minimum from a 50 to a 60, but you get 3 more health. And then you got the 30 health bases if you don't feel like any of those bases are worthwhile. Now for ramp options, you've got some pretty nice ones, and these are the 4 main ones you can see. You got Resupply Carrier, Price on Your Head, Spark of Hope, and Resupply. Now the easiest to use out of these is Resupply because it's just turn 2 onwards. You can just play it out and resource it. So you play it, put in your resources, jobs on your ramped, no extra steps. Whereas for Price on Your Head and Spark of Hope, you have to do extra steps, whereas Price on Your Head you have to put on a unit, then defeat that unit as long as it's not yours, so you can then claim the bounty and resource the top part of your deck. Whereas Spark of Hope requires something of yours to be defeated, so you can then ramp it to your resources by choosing a unit in your discard pile, and if it was defeated this phase, put in play as a resource. So they are a cheaper ramp, but they require extra steps. Then you got Resupply Carrier, which is just like Resupply. As soon as you play it, you get Resource top card of your deck. But it's a 6 cost, so it's more of a later game ramp for when you get to later stages if you want to go even further and quicker than your opponent. Now for Heroism, you got some pretty nice cards. You don't have too many Force events. There's only one Force event in Heroism command, and that is Luminous Beings. And it's a 6 cost event, so it's quite a high costing event. But it's more reliant on you getting quite a lot of units out on board, which is not something REY's focusing trying to do. But it allows you to put up 3 Force units from your discard pile back to the bottom of your deck in a random order, and then give that many units up to the number of units you put back, an extra 4 power for that phase. So 4 power, 4 health, for the phase, you can do up to 3 units as long as you put 3 units back. Now for units, you've got some pretty nice ones. You've got Jedi Consular and Gungi as good turn 1 plays. Jedi Consular, once you gain the Force, can then start using the Force to play out a unit and have it cost 2 less, so you can play out a unit 2 turns ahead. You got Gungi, which has the probably best, that's for a turn 1 unit, a 2/5, just no effect on him, which is worth it for 1 extra health than standard. You got Obi-Wan, who's a pretty nice one, who can be a Sentinel whenever you play himself or a Force unit. He can make himself gain Sentinel and the best stats for a 3 cost. You got Evkoff, which is also more ramp, but requires you to use the Force, because he's got an when defeated effect, you can use the Force, and if you do, put him in play as a resource. He's got solid stats for a 4 cost, being 5/4. You got your top end of Killer and Beck and Yoda. Killer and be able to play out more units than its normal cost by playing look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Find a unit, reveal it and play it, and it costs 3 less. So it's got a cost reduction to it, so you can play more than its actual cost. Whereas Yoda's a nice one to use the Force. Just use the Force to heal 5 damage to your base. Solid stats, and every time you do use the Force, you can deal damage to a unit equal to twice the number of units you control. So for every unit, you basically deal 2 damage per unit you control every time you use the Force to a unit. Then for the Space side, you don't have to use the Force. You got Chewbacca's Exit Pilot, which goes against hard control by making it itself, or whatever it's equipped onto, unable to be defeated or bounce back to hand by enemy card abilities. And it's a good spaceship to put them on, like Blue Leader and Bright Hope as well. Blue Leader being a nice ambusher, can even switch arenas, whilst Bright Hope is a nice sentinel for space, and also net you more cards. You also got some other good non-units as well, like Yoda's lightsaber. Another way to use the Force by using the Force to draw the heal 3 from your base, so you can buff up something and heal damage. And you got U reinforcement, being able to spam out units from the top 10 cards of your deck, so you can play it, look at the top 10 cards, get the 3 or more units with a combined set cost of 7 or less for free. So you can get 1 big 7 cost or a lot of little units as well. Then in the non-heroism side, you've got some nice cards as well. Not as strong as the heroism side, but some pretty good ones. Like you got the top lot being good versatility. Cobb Vamp being a nice way to keep units on board. Hu Yang being able to buff up units as long as it stays on board. So play it, buff up a unit, and then while he stays on the board, that unit stays buffed. Maz Kanata being a nice little battle trick, or when played, attack with Force unit, gets extra 2 power for that attack. Then you got things like Temple Jedi Temple Guardians or Guards, be able to ambush, restore as well, and then gain the Force due to ambushing if you got Force base. Dagon Master be able to use the Force to make use of the Force by when it's played or when defeated, look at the top 5 cards of the deck, find a Force unit and draw it. And then Terentarak being a nice ambusher for against Force decks. While your opponent controls a Force unit, he gains ambush. And you got your good top end vehicles in Resupply Carrier to Ramp, and Reinforcement Walker being your good big top end. An 8 costs 6/9, which when played on attack is look at the top card of your deck. You can either add it to your hand to get more options, or discard it to heal 3 damage to your base. You also got some good things like you got Jedi General's Blade, which is a very nice upgrade, which if it's equipped to a Jedi, that unit then gains on attack, you can then the next unit you will play costs 2 less. If you put this alongside on a unit and have also Jedi Consular, you can potentially play something 4 turns ahead, which is very, very strong. Now, for whatever event you have, you got Family Invention, another way to be able to ambush a unit out by playing a unit, give an ambush, and you can even smuggle this card out as well, so you can resource it and smuggle out later to do it. It's a very nice card. You got also Choose Sides being a nice top end card, which you can choose a unit your opponent controls, any unit you control, switch control of them. So give your opponent your weaker unit, take their big strong unit, and you also got Resupply for the ramp. So, is Command a good option to have with REY? I would say no, and that is because if you look at REY is all about using Force non-units to do damage, and there are very few in Command. and you're mainly looking at your leader and thinking you want to get the most out of the leader, since she deploys very late, so she can be quite late until she deploys, and you're going to be making use mostly of a leader effect. And since there isn't many cards that you can use to make use of that in command, I would say it's a good option. So let's move on to the last aspect. So lastly, we have Cunning, and this is kind of the reverse of command, where it's got a lot of very strong leaders and cards, but its bases are very lackluster. So with the base options, you've got the force bases. So you've got the standard attack with force unit, gain the force. Pretty simple, pretty easy, probably a good option. But the rare base is an action where by exhausting a friendly unit, the force is with you. So essentially you are exhausting a friendly unit to gain the force. So you're not attacking with them or making use of them outside of tapping and gaining the force. But then you need to play units to gain the force. But then you can't really play. If you're playing it using the force and you put sticking around, you're not really going to gain the force to then use force events to ping damage. So it's kind of going against it. It's not a great base. It's probably the worst out of the 4 rare force bases, but it's an option available to you. And some of the other bases you have are things like Petra Arena, Nabat Village, and your free health bases. Now, Petra Arena is the opposite one of Pal City, where when REY's out and about, she gets extra 1 power, whereas Pal City gave health, which is not great since you deploy so late. You're not going to get a benefit, and then bringing out a 7-8 isn't worth the lower health, especially in an aspect combination with no healing. And you've got Nabat Village, which can increase consistency. So what it does is give you 3 more cards in your opening hand, but you have no mulligan. So whatever decks, you look at 12 cards across the mulligan by a hand of 6, mulligan to another hand of 6. You'll get a hand of 9, but no mulligan, so whatever your 9 is, that's all you have. But then you don't get to keep those 3 cards, because as soon as your action phase starts, your first action phase, you have to put 3 of those back to the bottom of your deck in order you choose. So you don't get to keep the cards, but you get to see more cards in one go to have a more consistent opening, which is good. And you got Moss Isley as well as your, well, not Moss Isley, but very health bases if you feel like none of these are useful, which is what General is going to be, unless you're going for a force base. So those are the bases. Now for Heroism units, you got some pretty nice ones. You got some good Heroism units. You got your, well, let me turn this out for you. Essentially, you got your turn 1 young Padawan, which can gain you the force. So a nice way to gain the force without using the force base if you want to. And then you got Vanessa Rowe, which is a good reason to have the force, because when played, you can use the force to ready her, so you can then attack the same turn as played. You got Ahsoka, a nice hand control, which when played, make your opponent discard a card. And then if it's a unit they discard, you get an exhausted unit. Then the turn after that, you got Plo Koon, who can come down and ambush, and if you control 2 other units with him on the board, he gains raid free, so it's his hand. Turn after that, you got Depo Balava, also have an ambush, but also have a saboteur, so you can ignore sentinels and also defeat shields on a unit. Then after that, you've got Qui-Gon the next for the 6th cost play, or 6th turn play. And then he comes down as an ambusher of 7-5, and when defeated, he can choose one of your opponent's non-leader ground units and force your opponent to either put on top or bottom of the deck. So those are some of the units you got that are pretty strong. You've got pretty nice ones in Heroism. Then for your non-Heroism non-units, you got some force cards. So you got Mind Trick and Premonition of Doom. So these are both force events. Premonition of Doom is probably not that great. It's a 3-cost event that the next time you take initiative this phase, you exhaust all units, which is going to give your opponent at least 1 action to attack everything if you're just going to play this and then claim. Because you're going to play this and your opponent's going to get attack with the units, then you claim and you exhaust all the units, but then you've just played 1 card and want to skip to the next turn, which isn't great. It's not a great force event, and plus, if you're going to use this, then ping and then claim, your opponent's going to get 2 actions to attack with some of the units before they get exhausted, so not the greatest. And Mind Trick's pretty interesting, where it's a 2-cost force and a trick. So it exhausts any number of units with a combined cost of 4 or less. And if you control a force unit, those units lose their abilities and can't gain abilities for this phase. So there's a way to rest things down and ping damage and take off abilities off those units as well. So it could be a nice, interesting one, but then it doesn't really go with it doesn't add damage to do more, but it does get to disrupt your opponent. You got some other good events that are not force events, but pretty nice ones. Like you got Jam Communications and Spark Rebellion. Both being a look at your opponent's hand, but Jam Communications only discards an event from your opponent's hand, whereas Spark Rebellion discards anything. You got Clear the Field, able to bounce back a non-leader unit that costs 3 or less but to hand, and you return any If the opponent's got multiple copies of that same card, you get to return them all. And you've even got Bamboozle as a way to knock things down, rest something, and also knock off all upgrades back to the hand as well. So anything that's a physical upgrade that you had to put on it, back to the hand, so you have to pay to put it back on again. And anything that's like experience or tokens just get removed. And you can also play this card for free by discarding a Cunning card instead of paying its cost. So pretty nice there. Then for the non-Heroism cards, you got some pretty interesting ones. You got some good, probably more force events in the force non-units in the non-Heroism side. So this is probably one where the non-Heroism Cunning cards probably a little bit better for this leader. So you got some good force units in Mysterious Hermit, Dooku, Life Wind Sage, and Sorcerers of Tuned. So these are all force units you can use to gain the force with some nice benefits there, like Mysterious Hermit having ambush, Dooku having hidden, even re-triggered hidden on everyone's, which are pretty nice. And outside that, you've got some things like Guerrilla Soldier and Geonosis Patrol Fighter, which are pretty nice units. Guerrilla Soldier throwing out some indirect damage, and if any indirect damage hits your opponent's base, you get a base, you get to Redium, so you can attack the same turn. And also Geonosis Patrol Fighter can disrupt the early game and even come out earlier by using Exploit to defeat your units to play out cheaper. Now for force non-events, you got some pretty nice ones. You got Psychometry, which is a pretty nice one, where you can choose another card in your discard pile and then search the top 5 cards of your deck for a card that shares a trait with the chosen card, reveal it and draw. So it could be a way to kind of like find from the top 5 of your decks things like Force Throw and Force Lightning and stuff like that. Some pretty good force cards, and it's any card with the same trait. This could be a event, upgrade, or a unit, which you can find from the top 5. So it's a nice little searcher. You got Shin Flurry, which if you're using force units is it's like Timely Adventure where it's an ambusher. So, but it only works on force units, can bring them out ambush them, and it can't be smuggled unlike Timely Adventure. But the benefit it does instead of smuggle is make it so the next damage that unit would take is 2 less. You also got things like Trust Your Instinct being the force version of Shoot First. But you got to use the force. If you do attack with a unit, it gets 2 extra power, and it does damage for the defender. You got Impossible Escape, where it's another force event where you can either exhaust the friendly unit or use the force. And if you do either of those, you get exhaust the enemy unit and draw a card. You got Tip the Scale, which is never one of like the jam communications in Sparkle Rebellion. That's the one where you get lucky opponent's hand and discard a card from it, but this one allows you to discard a non-unit card. So you've got different options where Jam Communications discards an event, Sparkle Rebellion discards anything, whereas this discards any non-unit, and it's a force unit as well, or a force event. And you got Will of Force, which is like a force version of Waylay, where you get to return a non-leader unit back to his owner's hand. Then you can use the force, and if you do, that player discards a random card from the hand. So, pretty nice cards and some good options for the force. Now you got to think about, is it a good option for REY? I would say it probably is, because you've got a lot of force. You got lots of force non-units in there, probably more than any aspect. Get out. You got some good units as well, so you got more reasons to use. It might be a little bit harder getting to REY's deploy, but then with Disruption and Cunning, you could probably get there. But it's got more options to make sure you're using the effect every turn of REY to make sure you're using her before she does deploy. So lastly, we have my preferred aspects. This is something I've been playing since set 3, because before that, I was asked quite a lot, if I were to play a leader, how would I play it? So since I want to give as much information as I can in these videos, I've added this, that way you can get some advice on like, if I were to play a leader, how would I play it myself, if that is something you also need a bit more help with. So if I were to play REY, which I have been playing it and testing it, and my preferred version is REY Blue. So by going REY with Blue, you get access to some pretty solid force non-units that also pair well with her ability to ping by reducing the stats of units to then make him within range to then finish off with REY's ping, which makes him turn from a pretty good card to even better, where you got the REY's extra ping to make him a little bit better, which is cool. Plus you get access to some really solid cards and a good healing. I do like to have some healing, so that way, since REY deploys quite late, to survive long enough to go ahead and get to that point. And even then, if you do use up a lot of your cards in hand, REY can always replenish you with extra 2 cards when she does deploy. So that is the end of the video. So hopefully that's helped you understand how to build REY to suit you and your playstyle as much help as possible, and even got a deck profile that I had out before this video came out. If you want to check that out, I think I'll try and put the link in the description below. And yeah, that is it. So we've gone over all the aggression leaders. Now we're on the last slot. We've got the last 6 to go. So next week we're going to go over the Cunning leaders, so stay tuned for that, and bye for now.